When this was first announced, you made it sound like it was going to be a bit of DLC, similar to some of the DLC that we had with The Last of Us, and now all of a sudden we have this like surprise whole new Uncharted game. I mean, like, I'm not complaining, but it's awesome.
Yeah, I think, you know, when we originally committed to creating like some sort of DLC, we weren't really clear on what we wanted to make, and then once we finished Uncharted 4, we're like, okay, what story do we want to tell? What characters do we want to include in this? And I think what we quickly realized is, you know, we can't really tell a really satisfying story in the course of a standalone story in that regard, in the course of like a small DLC. So it quickly just grew and grew, and ultimately just a new Uncharted game, you know, with Chloe at the helm.
Chloe is actually my favorite character in the whole series.
Yeah, it's a really exciting time for the studio. I mean, after spending the last 10 years kind of chronicling the adventures of Nathan Drake, it's awesome to have Chloe back in a leading role and on this new adventure with Nadine.
Chloe's been featured in a couple of games before, but we've only really just met Nadine. What prompted the decision to pair them together?
Well, they're both kind of enigmatic. They're both, despite, you know, having appeared in prior games, we only really scratched the surface of who they are and what motivates them. So in that regard, they were both really interesting from a narrative perspective in terms of these are the characters we can tell like the kind of most about in this new game in a full story. So in terms of their dynamic together, though, what was really interesting is like they're almost sort of like contrasting and complementary in so many ways. Like they're complementary in the sense that they're kind of like loners, they keep others at like arm's length, and they're kind of mysterious in that way, but they're also kind of very different in terms of their personalities. Chloe's improvisational and, you know, flies by the seat of her pants, and she's kind of always cracking wise, and Nadine is very serious and, you know, kind of disciplined and pragmatic in that way. So they have to learn to work together and to figure out if they can trust each other, because this is ultimately the first time they're working together.
Is it a different environment to be in when you're playing as a woman, or is she pretty much, you could substitute her for Nathan Drake in the environment in terms of the way it feels to play?
In terms of functionality and her capability, yeah, she's like, you know, she can go toe-to-toe with Nathan Drake. I think in terms of her character and how it influences everything about the game, absolutely. Like Chloe, this is Chloe's game, and you can kind of feel it at every level. From the way, you know, the dialogue and the just kind of passing conversations between Chloe and Nadine to the way she fights, and then some of the new mechanics she has, like the lockpicking, which is, you know, an extension of the fact that she's kind of like this master thief. Right. Yeah, this is like at every level you can really feel Chloe's influence in the game.
So when I was playing the game just now, I've noticed that it's quite a lot more open world than some of the previous games, and we had kind of elements of that broader landscape in Uncharted 4, but this was quite, you know, you can kind of go anywhere in any order in some of the areas that you can play in. So what prompted that decision?
So we really kind of scratched the surface a little bit with Madagascar and Uncharted 4, but I think with this environment, what we really wanted to do was kind of take that idea and run with it and make it, you know, even bigger, but also give you more to do, but also advance the story through what you do. Everything you do in this course of this game, and of this chapter rather, you are advancing the story. You're learning about the details of, you know, Chloe's past, Nadine's history, the dynamic between them, as well as some of the lore and history of the artifact that they're after and the Hoysala Empire, which they're kind of looking to discover. It's about giving freedom, but also keeping the pace of the narrative and the gameplay. And I think we've done a pretty good job of striking that balance with this chapter.
Another thing that we saw in Uncharted 4 was that it was probably the most cinematic of the series. There was a real shift towards like even more detail in the motion capture and the kind of relationship development between the characters. Is that something that you've tried to kind of push in this particular game as well? Yeah,
the character's everything to us, and the story is everything. I think this character journey and the dynamic between them is central to the story. And then of course we have our new antagonist character, Asav, who you know, is like kind of the third pillar of this character journey and the main point of conflict. So yeah, character play is a huge part of it, and I think we've continued that emphasis in terms of the performance capture we use. So you know, the three actors, Claudia Black, who returns as Chloe, Laura Bailey, who returns as Nadine, and then Usman Ali, who is our new antagonist character, Asav. They, you know, played really well off of each other in the performance capture stage, and you see that kind of dynamic come out in their performances in the game. So yeah, it's absolutely that continuing that kind of cinematic feel.
So, given that I wasn't expecting a full game out of this, it's kind of raised my hopes that the Uncharted series is going to live on and forever, and that you've got more games planning. Is that true, do you think?
You know, we would never say never, because who wants to limit themselves? But I think right now our focus is just kind of finishing this game up and getting it out the door, and then continuing the development of The Last of Us. But beyond that, we'll just have to see. It's really close, only a couple weeks left, and
Such a tease.
I know, but we can't wait for you to play the full game when it launches in August 23rd in the state in Australia. And
this is empty.
Yeah, you're trying.
They're all empty.
I promise they're all empty.
Well, thanks so much for talking to me. That was great.
You.
I can't wait to play it. Really.